Hello and welcome to today's ICA LinkedIn Live, where we're going to consider the impact of behavioral science within compliance. We do this for just 15 minutes, and so we'll move at some speed in the conversation that I'm about to have with my colleague I'm thrilled to be with today, and that is Dee Hurry. Dee has been working in behavioral science for the last 10 plus years, and through her business, Play Nicely, she used that as a vehicle to help thousands of individuals to improve their performance, their efficiency, and their effectiveness. So, Dee, thank you very much for joining me today. And we are, of course, going to explore the nature of behavioral science and the impact it can have within compliance in particular. But can we start by just briefly explaining what we mean by behavioral science?
Hi, Tim. Yes, thanks for having me. It's a real privilege to be with everyone today. So behavioral science is one of those interesting terms which is become a bit of a catch-all, but really, and when it comes to understanding and appreciating human behavior and particularly the decision-making process, I think we have got so much still to learn. And our insights and our understanding and our perspectives and even our methods are continuously being developed. But one thing I do know and have experienced and appreciated in both positive and negative ways is that people's behavior will impact a plan or a result, regardless of whether we're paying attention to it or not. It's a bit like gravity, whether you believe in it or whether you're thinking about it, it's going to grab you when you step off the edge of a building. And so this is really the concept of behavioral science is trying to use these patterns to predict and to understand how people are going to behave and to use that in a constructive way for everyone's benefit.
So thank you. And we've rather boldly suggested that this is like a superpower within compliance. Maybe that's going quite a long way in terms of describing the potential impact of an understanding of behavioral science. But can I just briefly set the scene? And in a moment, I'm gonna ask you, Dee, just what we mean by that. Why this area can have such a strong impact within compliance. But before I ask you, I think it's worth just highlighting that compliance is, of course, complex. It's rapidly changing around us at the moment. But one thing remains the same, and that is that we need to change behaviors. We need to change decision making within organizations. There's this wonderful term, rules aren't self-executing. It isn't enough to write the rules and the policies. We need to actually affect people's behavior and decision making. And this, of course, is where behavioral science is so important. So can I ask, how can an understanding of behavioral science provide that kind of superpower, or at the very least, improve and enhance our approach to compliance?
So Tim, I actually think that using the word superpower, as you say, it sounds a little bit of a reach, but I definitely believe that it does actually give you an incredible lever to implement things. If we pay attention to who people are, if we pay attention to how they naturally do things, and if we pay attention to where behavior actually comes from, then what we can do is we can use that, particularly in an industry that is so impactful and so crucial, such as risk and compliance. We can use that to design, train, and implement our systems so much more effectively, because we're taking into account that, as you say, even though we say rules aren't self-executing, I take it even one step further. No process is self-executing. Every single process, no matter how well it's designed, is executed by people's actions. So in other words, the human element cannot be removed from anything that we're trying to do, any system that we're trying to impact. So it's absolutely essential that we have a look at that and that we bring that into it. And in terms of just understanding how that actually works and the areas in which it can impact, I gave brief thought to three specific aspects of behavior, which has a really big impact in terms of how we work. And if you would allow me the latitude, I have three
Please do,
examples of
yes. Thank you.
clients that I've worked with. So the first question that I want to ask is, what business are we in when we talk about risk and compliance? You know, some people would say we're in the risk of rules, but as you've so cleverly pointed out, we are actually in the business of behavior change. And I'd like to go so far as to say we're actually in the business of trust. So, and the best way to show you what this means is that, to give you an example. So I recently worked with a group of people in the last couple of years. They're risk and compliance team in a big corporate here in South Africa, but they have a very global reach. And this team was feeling incredibly disempowered. All that they felt that they were doing was basically just writing reports that nobody paid attention to, running after people for information, and getting very frustrated that they had, you know. So as I worked with them, I said to them, well, first of all, tell me what you want to, what impact do you want to have? Why is this frustrating you? And as I worked with them, what really came out was they wanted to lead their business in the area of risk and compliance. That meant that they had to work out how to impact leadership decisions and resource management and policy implementation. So I said, what do you need in order to do that? And what came out of that was they needed to understand that they were in the business of trust. And that meant that they had to work out how to gain the trust of the people in the business. So the people started telling them what they needed to know. This then added life and real meaning and real impact and real truth to their reporting. And what they did then is that they started to grow in confidence in terms of impacting the leadership decision. So in other words, they started to talk through their reports with leadership going, this means that these are where the areas are. These are the areas of concern. This is what we need to look at. These are where the gaps are. And then to some extent, even they grew so much in confidence that they could start holding the leadership of the business accountable in terms of the decisions that weren't being made and that needed to be made.
So if I can, sorry, Dee, I've jumped
Absolutely,
in
go
there,
for
but
it.
I imagine that there's people all over the world thinking right now, as we speak, well, how do you do that? Because um, establishing trust, as you say, it's a cornerstone of effectiveness within the business. But how can you build those sorts of relationships that are founded on confidence and trust?
So the crucial part was that they needed to change how they did things, and bring into having conversations with people. So essentially it was around, we're not just shoving forms in your direction and expecting you to fill them in. We're listening to you. And proving that they were listening was by having a conversation with somebody, and by setting up those conversations and saying, tell us what's concerning you in your area. Tell us what we need to tell the leadership of the business in the area of risk. What are you picking up? What are you seeing? And when we start to look at behavior and how people are motivated, we begin to understand that people are extremely hardwired to be able to pick up certain pieces of data. And so if we begin to listen to different people in terms of what they can pick up and what they can understand, we can start to fill in the dots, and we can start to fill in the picture that we need to then report on to our leaders. And so those conversations were absolutely critical in terms of having that. And those conversations were also crucial in terms of them starting to build confidence in what they knew what was happening in the business. So their reports took on, as I said, more depth and more impact, and started to be more practical in terms of how the leadership was using that information.
So what you did, if I understand you correctly, is you helped that compliance team to change their behavior, to take a more
Yes,
nuanced approach, and that
absolutely.
in time led to a change in behavior within the leadership in the organization. And of course, as we know, if that happens, then that can have a trickle-down effect across the entire organization.
Absolutely. And there's only one reason why that whole project worked, and that was because the leader of the team was prepared to invest in a year-long program with her team, which included team workshops and individual conversations and individual coaching, so that we could move the whole team forward. And without that kind of investment, without that kind of action, you're probably not going to see that kind of impact.
Okay, so that's quite sobering, isn't it? So this isn't a quick fix that we're talking about now. This is about investment in the medium and long term,
Absolutely.
and a willingness
Absolutely.
for us within compliance to confront some of our own behaviors and assumptions in order to be more
Yes.
effective.
Yes, self-knowledge was definitely a huge part of that. So in each of those conversations, both with the leader of the team as well as with the members of the team, them getting to know themselves better, what they could read, what they couldn't read, the partnerships that they needed to build, how they needed to work together as a team to trust themselves and each other was also a key
Mm,
part to that.
mm.
So there's a whole number of these aspects of trust which come into this. And really that's what we need to be.
Brilliant. So you said you had three. It may be that we've only got time for two of your examples, but could we
Absolutely.
move on to another now?
Yes.
I'd love to hear about another example of what you've done.
So the second most powerful impact that I see in terms of behavior and priority is this concept of alignment. So what I found was a huge impact for another compliance professional, who was a client of mine, is what we uncovered in the conversations that I had with her is that she was being motivated, incentivized, and measured on certain actions. And other people in the business were being compensated, motivated, and incentivized on actions, and the two were actually at cross purposes. So, in other words, inadvertently, we set up our people to compete against one another. And the worst part of that is that we often set up our compliance teams to police the rest of the business's behavior when actually these individuals are being incentivized to act in that way. So the alignment of priorities, the alignment of values, and the setting up of every single action of every single person in the business towards a single common goal is absolutely essential. And so that was generating huge tension for her because, instinctively what you see is you've got two different types of people often in a business is you've got the individual who appreciates and who values rules and who is naturally contained by nature. So, in other words, they protect, they do the right thing. And then you have individuals in a business, and we need them, that are expansive by nature. So, they are exploratory, they test the boundaries, they test the rules. And if we don't get these two sets of behaviors aligned, then what we're going to have is we're going to have a competition and we're going to have gaps in our compliance because you're going to have people who are actually expecting others to do the right thing. And you're going to have individuals who are going to say, make me. So, when we look at behavior in all honesty, that is really what we're looking at is how do we be honest about how people are behaving? And we appreciate that they're behaving like that because they have certain priorities, and because that's naturally how they're wired. And there is a time and a place for each of those behaviors. But when
So
we
as you,
design our compliance systems, we have to take them both into account.
I'm so sorry, Dee, I
No,
cut
no, no,
across you,
sorry, I get
but
a bit carried away.
as you were saying that, I was thinking, yeah, you're kind of describing what for many compliance officers is at the heart of their business. They're seen as the gatekeepers.
Absolutely.
Whereas the relationship managers or the other commercial first line capabilities are all about driving progress, innovation, making more money. The compliance officer is seen as, well, their role is to make sure that it's done in a way which is ethical and so on, and that can
Mm.
create. So coming back to your point, how can you align the the goals, the aspirations of those different businesses? Can I suggest one way, and you can tell me whether
Absolutely.
whether
Go
this
for
is
it.
right or not. So one thing we have seen over the last few years is that doing things in the right way, concepts such as trust and integrity, are woven into the fabric of businesses, particularly the larger businesses, through their values, through a changing culture, and so on. We're even starting to see individuals working on the front line who have compliance as part of their performance objectives and linked to bonuses and the like. Is that the sort of thing that you're getting at?
that definitely is going to start leading towards that kind of alignment, because ultimately, if you're going to reward behavior, you have to reward behavior that's in the right direction. At the same time, I think it's important to understand that if we are talking about motivation, there's two ways in which we can motivate people. We can motivate them externally, carrot or the stick. So in other words, we're going to give people bonuses for behaving in the right way, or we're going to punish them if they behave in the wrong way. But these are still external motivations. The moment you take them away, the moment nobody's looking, they will go back to an internal motivation. So it then becomes important to understand that we actually need to shift an individual's internal motivation. In other words, make it important to them for reasons that they can align with. And that's the only thing that is really going to be lasting, because otherwise you're going to be running after people, either trying to persuade them to do the right thing or punishing them when they don't.
We are coming up towards the end of our 15 minutes, Dee.
Absolutely.
I feel we could go on, well, I know that we could go on for much, much longer, and we really have just barely scratched the surface. But what we have talked about is the importance of trust. You've touched on the importance also of aligning our goals and aspirations, and we've thought about practicalities and examples of each of those. And of course, you've touched on motivation. In a moment, you and I are going to record a further 15 minutes, which will be available to ICA members on our Learning Hub. But for the moment, we're about to sign off. But before we do, can I just ask for 4 concrete things that compliance professionals around the world who are listening today can do immediately or in the next weeks and months?
Sure. Let me jump in quickly. Okay, so I think that the key things that we need to do here is, first of all, as a compliance professional, remember who you are and why you do what you do. You're on the front lines and you're an expert in your area. So get clear on your mandate as a team and negotiate, if necessary, how to shift that mandate if need be. Are you a reporting function, or are you trying to lead the business in terms of decision making? Because those are two different approaches. The second thing that I would say is absolutely essential as a compliance team is make sure you have the right natural skills in the team. That means that you need individuals who can anticipate so think strategically, anticipate what might happen. You need individuals who are investigative. So in other words, they instinctively ask what did happen and why. You need people thinkers. In other words, these are the people who think on behalf of others and who understand the impact of certain decisions and actions and procedures on people. And then you get habitual people. You need habitual people in your team who help us build, maintain, and generate consistent outcomes and build consistent systems. So the right people in the team is essential. The third thing is manage yourself. Build trust in yourself. Build trust in your competence as an expert. Try not to get frustrated when it appears that people are disrespecting you or trying to get around you. That's just human nature. Work to earn the trust of the individuals in your business and those around you so that you can get the information and the actions that you need from them. Without that trust, it's not going to happen. A last key thing to remember: a rule that costs someone more than they want to or can pay in any given moment is not going to be committed to. So in other words, if that individual's priority is to meet a deadline or to keep a boss happy, they will shift the task that you want from them down the line and down the priority. So make sure that your compliance area sits high enough on the list of priorities in the business around you. And hopefully that will help you guys to do what you need to do.
There's so much contained within what you say. Thank you so much, Dee. So just to summarize, your 4 suggestions as we finish are: remember who we are as compliance officers. Ensure that we have the right balance of skills and awareness within our team. Manage ourselves and ensure we bring confidence and assurance to what we do. And finally, think about the rules, the policies, the guidance that we're setting and ensure that it actually can be achieved. If it costs too much, it's not going to happen. Thank you so much, Dee, for joining
You're
me
most
today.
welcome, Tom. It's been a
And
privilege
just
to be with you.
and just as we finish, It's worth mentioning that our next LinkedIn Live is going to focus on compliance as a leadership function within businesses. So, of course, there's a good deal of overlap with what we've just been talking about. That takes place on the 29th of May at the same time, 1:30 p.m. UK time. And can I also mention and just remind colleagues and ICA members in particular that you and I are going to continue this conversation, and that will be available on our Learning Hub. But for the moment, I apologize, I've slightly overrun, but thank you very much for joining us across the world, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.